Chapter 6. The Reminiscences of Dr. Watson. Our prisoner's violent resistance didn't seem to reflect any personal animosity toward us. Once he realized he was overpowered, he smiled affably and hoped he hadn't hurt anyone in the scuffle. "I assume you're taking me to the police station," he remarked to Sherlock Holmes. "My cab is at the door. If you untie my legs, I'll walk down. I'm not as light as I used to be." Gregson and Lestrade looked skeptical, but Holmes took the man at his word and untied the towel from his ankles. The prisoner stood and stretched, confirming he was free to move. I noticed then that I had rarely seen a more powerfully built man. His dark, sun-scorched face showed a level of determination and energy that was just as formidable as his physical strength. "If there's ever an opening for a police chief, you're the man for the job," he said, looking at Holmes with genuine admiration. "The way you stayed on my trail was incredible." "You should come with me," Holmes said to the detectives. Lestrade offered to drive. Gregson joined us inside the cab, and at Holmes's invitation I came along as well. Our prisoner made no attempt to escape. He stepped calmly into his own cab, and we drove to the station. At the station, an unemotional inspector noted the prisoner's name and the charges: the murder of Enoch Drebber and Joseph Stangerson. "You will be brought before a magistrate later this week," the inspector said. "In the meantime, Mir Jefferson Hope, is there anything you wish to say? I must warn you that your words will be recorded and may be used against you." "I have a lot to say," Hope replied slowly. "I want to tell you everything." "Shouldn't you save that for your trial?" the inspector asked. "I may never reach a trial," Hope answered calmly. "Don't look so startled. I'm not thinking of suicide. Are you a doctor?" He turned his dark eyes toward me. "Yes, I am," I replied. "Then put your hand here," he said, gesturing with his handcuffed wrists to his chest. I did so, and immediately felt an extraordinary thumping and commotion inside him. His chest walls seemed to vibrate like a fragile building shaken by a powerful engine. In the quiet room, I could hear a dull humming sound coming from his heart. "You have an aortic aneurysm," I exclaimed. "That's what they call it," he said placidly. "A doctor told me last week it's bound to burst any day now. I got it from years of exposure and starvation in the mountains. My work is done now, so I don't care when I go, but I'd like to leave an account of this business behind. I don't want to be remembered as a common murderer." After a brief discussion, the officials agreed to take his statement, given the immediate danger to his life. Hope sat down, explaining that the aneurysm made him tire easily. The statement of Jefferson. "Hope, it doesn't matter to you why I hated those men," Hope began. "It's enough to know they were responsible for the deaths of a father and daughter, and they had forfeited their own lives. Because of the time that had passed, I couldn't convict them in a court of law. So I decided to be judge, jury, and executioner all in one. You would have done the same if you had any manhood in you. The girl I mentioned was supposed to marry me 20 years ago. She was forced to marry Drebber and died of a broken heart. I took the wedding ring from her dead finger and swore that Drebber's dying eyes would see that ring, and his last thoughts would be of his crime. I've carried it across 2 continents until I caught them. If I die tomorrow, I die knowing my work is done. They are dead by my hand. They were rich and I was poor, which made following them difficult. When I reached London, I was nearly broke. I found work as a cab driver. It was hard to learn the maze of this city, but I used a map and eventually mastered the main routes. It took time to find them, but I eventually tracked them to a boarding house in Camberwell. I grew a beard so they wouldn't recognize me. I stalked them, waiting for my chance. They were cunning. They never went out alone or after dark. For 2 weeks, I drove behind them and never saw them separate. Drebber was usually drunk, but Stangerson was always on guard. My only fear was that my aneurysm would burst before I could finish the job. Finally, one evening at Euston Station, they were separated. They had missed their train to Liverpool. Drebber wanted to handle some private business and told Stangerson to wait for him at Halliday's private hotel. This was my moment. I didn't want to just kill him. I wanted him to know why he was dying. Some days earlier, a passenger had left a key to a vacant house in Brixton Road in my cab. I had made a duplicate before returning it. That house was the perfect place. I followed Drebber's cab after he left a pub. He was heavily drunk. He went back to his old boarding house, but was kicked out by a young man for insulting a girl. He stumbled out and hailed my cab. "Drive me to Halliday's," he said. Inside the cab, I had him. I drove him to the empty house in Brixton. He was so drunk he followed me inside without a word. I lit a candle and showed him my face. The horror in his eyes showed he recognized me. I laughed. I told him his wanderings were over. I didn't want to murder him in cold blood. I wanted to give him a chance, a choice. Years ago, I had worked in a lab and stolen some powerful South American arrow poison. I had made 2 identical-looking pills. One was deadly poison, the other was harmless sugar. I held out the box and told him to choose. I would take the one he left. He begged for mercy, but I held a knife to his throat until he picked one. We both swallowed our pills and waited. Within a minute, the poison hit him. He fell dead. I showed him Lucy's ring one last time as he died. My nose began to bleed from the excitement. I used the blood to write "Rach" on the wall, a trick to confuse the police, something I'd read about in a New York case. I left, but realized I had dropped the ring. I went back for it, but ran right into a policeman. I escaped by pretending to be a harmless drunk. Next was Stangerson. I tracked him to his hotel. I climbed a ladder into his window at dawn. I offered him the same choice of pills. Instead of choosing, he lunged for my throat. In self-defense, I stabbed him. It wouldn't have mattered. God would never have let him pick the harmless pill anyway. After that, I just kept driving my cab until I could save enough to go home. Then a boy came to the yard saying a gentleman at 221B Baker Street wanted me. I went there, and this young man put the handcuffs on me before I knew what was happening. That's my story. You can call me a murderer, but I consider myself an officer of justice. The room was silent. Even the detective seemed moved by the intensity of the story. "There's only one thing," Holmes said. "Who was the accomplice who came for the ring I advertised?" Hope winked. "I keep my own secrets. I saw your ad and suspected a trap, so a friend volunteered to go. He did a good job, didn't he?" "He certainly did," Holmes admitted. The inspector then ended the session, noting that Hope would appear before a magistrate on Thursday. As Jefferson Hope was led away by the guards, Holmes and I took a cab back to Baker Street.